Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Second Page Podcast. I am Joe Oswald, and with me, as always, my good friend across the aisle.
Welcome, Jay Martinez, as always, and welcome to episode 19, Stormy with a Chance of Nukes.
Ooh.
It was a stormy week as Hurricane Daniels blew through D.C. Huckabee Sanders finally drops the ball. Trump hopes to become the first POTUS to meet with a North Korean leader. Rafael throws Beto shade. Trump starts a global trade war, and fascism returns home to Italy as the crazy people over there elect a far-right populist government to lead them moving forward. But to counteract that, we're going to talk about Merkel and her winning her fourth term, and she's been in power for a while now.
Can we call her the Merc?
Who are you? We haven't introduced you yet.
Hey!
Damn it.
How's everybody doing?
Sitting behind the big
Steve,
brown D.
I'm so sorry, man.
Wow,
That's 2 weeks in a row.
Okay.
I'm just excited that I'm writing down the intros now, and I'm just trying to nail it.
Okay.
So I forget. I'm sorry, man.
So this is teleprompter, Jay.
Yeah,
Very different from off the cuff.
I'm trying to change. I'm trying to be more presidential now.
Yes.
So I'm trying to be
I have the best intros. Nobody writes a better intro than me.
I don't want to go off the cuff anymore. Cuff anymore.
Off the cuff?
Off
the
yeah,
cuff.
Off the cuff.
Okay.
But anyway, so yeah, Steve Sir Johnson there, our producer as always, and
Hey, how you guys doing?
Yeah.
good. So I want to talk about the storm that blew over the Northeast, or particularly the White House. Is that what we're starting with? No, we're not. No, I'm sorry. We're starting with
See, you
North
got focus on the
Get your
prompter.
shit together,
North
man.
Korea. I'm trying.
Do it again. We're going to go live. We're going to do it live.
3, 2, 1, and Joe.
Okay, welcome back to Sing Big Boy. All right, so we're starting with North Korea.
North Korea.
North
Okay.
Korea.
So the news-
northernmost Korea of the Koreas.
Oh, got it. That's what it is.
Of them.
But anyway, so Trump accepted an invitation that was passed along through a South Korean delegation that had met with the North Koreans earlier this week. The Trump announces Thursday night, right? Yes, it was Thursday night. Again, like everything he does, it seemed like a reality TV show waiting to happen. Popped his head into the press room, said, "Hey guys, don't go home. I'll be right back with some news." He ends up not coming back, but ends up being a South Korean delegation representative. I forget who it was. I think their foreign secretary. I don't know who really the guy was.
Well, of course, he's foreign. He's from another
Yeah.
country.
But anyway, so they said that Kim Jong-un had extended an invitation to Trump, and Trump, under certain conditions, has accepted to meet with him by May. So Joe and Steve, do you support this? Do you think it'll work? Why is Trump doing this? And will he succeed where other presidents have not?
Well, first of all, the meeting was set up through the South Korean delegation, and Trump told the delegate to make an announcement from the White House that this was going to happen. But the guy was just like, well, I kind of have to check with my president first. It's like, you're not president of the world yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. So he checked with Moon Jae-in, and they approved it. And they're going to attempt to have a summit on the Korean Peninsula, which kind of is a little step up from the one they had back in the early 2000s, when they met in China for Six-Nation talks about denuclearization. While on one hand,
that was Bush's plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On one hand, I do support the idea of direct talks with people. I mean, like Obama said, you don't, get through to other countries without talking to them. You've got to talk to them. However, I also do have a bit of a longer memory. It might not be the best memory in the world, but it's a good memory. It's one of my favorite memories that I have is my own memory. So I remember Barack Obama being chided for wanting to meet with the leader of Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad.
Yes.
It sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Whatever happened to that guy, by the way?
He's not president anymore.
Yeah.
So he's somewhere in Iran.
He's somewhere.
But I mean, Obama was brutally criticized by the right for wanting to meet with the president of Iran, saying if we don't talk to them directly about their nuclear program, they're never going to give it up.
Yeah.
And I guarantee somewhere in the ethos, there is a tweet that somebody will find where Donald Trump complained about Barack.
I meant to look that up before the show, actually.
I'm sure he chided Barack at some point for wanting to meet with Iran's president. But now Donald Trump believes that meeting with Kim Jong-un will help de-escalate a situation he himself escalated in the first place, and he will win praise for having done so. I think that despite the fact that it is a national security interest to engage with the North Koreans directly to diffuse the situation that, again, Trump kind of sort of escalated for us in the first place, for one, they're not going to give up their nuclear program. They're saying they're going to give they will begin talks by saying they will stop with the nuclear tests, but they've already tested. They've already made their bombs. They already have what they want. So what can they have already said we will not give up our nukes. It's the only deterrent they have to invasion. They were occupied by Japan for hundreds of years. They don't want to be pushed around by America anymore, and Donald Trump wants to be the first one to do it. He cares more about what it looks like than what it will actually accomplish. And even if for some reason the talks go ahead, he's just going to give them stuff that they would probably never have gotten in the first place and won't give us anything in return. And then Donald Trump's going to go, I made a deal, I did this, it's all me, it's all me, it's all me. Didn't involve any ambassadors or advisors with this planned meeting. And we don't even know if it's actually going to happen. If this falls through, he's just going to blame them and say, they canceled it. They did something that I didn't.
There's no real date set in stone. Yesterday, during the press conference, Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked a few times, "Is there a specific date? Why is it May? This and this?" And she said, "There's no specific date, but we will be meeting under certain conditions. If they keep their promises that." They won't continue to test, and they're okay. And apparently they're okay, or they understand that the U.S. and South Korea will keep moving forward with testing. So this does seem like a lot of concessions from the North Koreans, which usually they won't make. But it's not the first time a U.S. president has been invited to meet with North Koreans, and for the most part, it's a strong hand. It's something that the North Koreans have always wanted, is to have a U.S. president visit them and kind of, validate their power and their regime. And this has been something that most presidents have been unwilling to do, with the exception of Obama, even though he didn't do it. And it's seen as a way to not kind of give in without getting something in return. And Trump is almost gambling with this, because he's not getting any real concessions yet. And he already said that he will accept the invitation. Will it happen? Will it not? We don't know. With Trump, it's always up in the air.
Let me ask you guys a few questions.
Sure.
Isn't the concession that they've agreed to potentially stop developing their nuclear arms program
that they've already developed?
Yeah, exactly.
But again, I'm more concerned with the ICBMs and things like that. Like they're what they're working on, and this could just be because they figured, hey, we can't crack it, right?
Yeah.
So they're
we really can't. We try our best. We can't figure it out.
Right. Also, they have also said this before and then broke their word before.
Yeah.
But all that said, I think that if you have to, and we can complain about Trump in a million other ways, if he can work out some kind of a deal that will keep them in line, then on a whole, even if he's doing it for his own narcissistic reasons, even if they get more than they should have, if it makes the world a safer place, isn't that a good thing?
Oh, that sounds so cute. So, I have to think the North Korean government has a very young dictator, very young leader who very much so wants to be a leader until he dies late into his 60s.
You're talking
and
about
70s.
Trump, or you're
he's already.
I like what you did there.
Okay.
But that's nice.
But not a very young guy.
The North Korean dictator wants to live a nice long life in charge. He also is running out of money. The hard currency reserves of North Korea have always been historically low. They are the number one counterfeiters of U.S. currency, having somehow secured some of our old money printing presses. They regularly engage with Egyptians, the Russians, the Chinese, and countries like Malaysia, Singapore, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Angola, all of these places in the world which, despite the dozens of sanctions that the U.S. and the UN has put on North Korea, they still get around it. They still hide things under international aid shipments, bags of rice with grenade launchers underneath of them. They find a way to get what they need to get done. I mean, we're talking about, the war ended in 55, 53? And they have
the war hasn't really ended.
The armistice.
Yeah.
So it's been 60, 70 years since then, and they're still around. They're still here. Yes, they do live in pretty terrible conditions, and there's poverty rampant and malnutrition and all this, but they're not going to give up. And short of killing every single person in North Korea, you will not be able to just put your foot on them.
Yeah.
So they're not just going to give up their program. They're probably fine stalling it to reboost their economy a little bit, to get some food into the country, to reduce some of the sanctions. But they'll just start it right back up again because it's in their national security interest. It's in their self-defense interest, not the United States. We're going to get bogged down in here in these conversations. It's a distraction for the Trump administration to keep people off of the Stormy Danielses and the Nuneses and the
can we
There's
say that the
never
deal with
a
North
lack.
Korea though is like
there was
are
a
we
thing.
saying that this is orchestrated just to take
It's
us off
partial,
the Stormy
but
trail?
someone had anonymously reported that Kim Jong-un proposed this because he thought there'd be a chance he'd get to meet Stormy Daniels.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Unconfirmed rumor.
Look,
Okay.
what I think this is going to come down to is versus, I guess, history repeating itself and political actors, I guess, doing what they've always done. And then there's this hope aspect of it as well. I don't want to root against Trump for this, and I'm not. I think if he can do something, if he could make the world safer, I will give him the credit due. I know he's not doing this for any other reason more than his own ego, and because he wants to be the first president to do something. But again, I don't care the reasons why. If it gets the job done, it gets it done. But what we were talking about before the show is that other administrations have laid out concrete plans about where certain lines are drawn or what they expect to get back in concessions if they're willing to meet or whatever North Korea is going to ask of us, right? And that's what I haven't seen Trump do yet. Clinton got very close to meeting with North Korea when he was president back in 2000. What broke the deal for him was when Madeleine Albright, his Secretary of State at the time, when she went to visit North Korea, they wouldn't ultimately give up or promise to give up the missiles they had already made. So that was a deal breaker for Clinton. He ended up not going, but he saw that his visit, his presence of being there was a big bargaining chip that he wasn't willing to give up for just nothing. And Trump is kind of gambling right now. And again, I'm not.
You mean a guy that owns casinos wants to gamble?
I know.
No,
Wow,
I
right?
guess
And I want him to do well. What I'm trying to say ultimately is I'm rooting for him in this. Like if he can figure it out, but.
Couldn't we say though that sometimes like you just kind of have to throw out the rule book because of all these years of it not working?
Yes.
And look, we worked something out with Cuba after ostracizing them for God knows how long.
Yeah.
And maybe this is sort of the same thing. Now, I do, with one caveat, I will say, what is the incentive for the North Koreans to give up the missiles they have already developed, or to even agree to some kind of like check system to make sure they're keeping their end of the deal if we see that Trump is trashing the Iran deal and he wants to tear that up, right? If I'm North Korea and I'm looking at that, I'm like, I'm not giving you guys shit.
Exactly.
Yeah. But see, that's where if I'm North Korea, I'm looking at two examples from the Trump administration. I think we should be looking at them as well. Cuba, which you brought up, is a great example. Obama did try diplomacy, and for all intents and purposes, it did work. You know, we reopened
until Trump comes
exactly.
along.
We reopened an embassy. There was this boom in tourism. You know, entrepreneurship was growing in Cuba. Privatization of homes and other businesses going on. Then Trump comes back and cuts it out.
So we do need to add to that though that there was this incident of all the diplomats having to be flown out because hang on, I know where you're going. Just let me finish.
Okay,
let me finish here. I found that the timing of that very suspicious.
Yes.
That all of a sudden the deal's going fine, and now there's this sonic attack that nobody knows.
Nobody could hear it or see it, but it happened.
There were over 4 million
Hillary's
visitors
emails
to Cuba last year. For not just Americans.
We're not at the pivot to Hillary's emails time yet.
Not yet. It's coming. Over 4 million visitors to Cuba last year from around the world. None, aside from the immediate family members of the 19 U.S. officials working in Cuba, experienced anything remotely similar to what was reported by these 19 individuals.
Did anybody check to see if the carbon monoxide detectors were working?
I don't know.
Okay,
and even the doctors in that said that there's nothing. It's like you said, it was a political ploy to give him a reason to recall the embassy and to put restrictions back in place that Obama had rolled back.
I like to
That's
play
all
this
it
game where if I was writing a political thriller.
Okay.
Right? Now, I am not saying that there is any basis of fact to this. I'm not even saying that you should look this up. I don't believe this is what happened. All I'm saying is that if I were to write a political thriller novel and there was a country that I didn't want us to have dealings with, and the previous administration did, I would deploy some kind of a sonic attack to bring all the diplomats home to ruin that deal. Essentially, attacking my own people, but making it look like them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or
if there's
not
ever
even
been
a real
time.
attack. You just tell your people, say what you're gonna freaking say because that's your mission now, right? I mean, can they? They could just say
You
this.
can't. No. You see, here's the thing. You can't trust them to not have a whistleblower. The only way to do it is to actually really do the sonic attack.
If
I was writing
it's
a novel,
a possibility. Because do you think that the Cubans really have that technology?
No.
They're spending their time curing cancer.
No.
We are the ones that developed sonic weapons to use in Iraq.
No, I know.
I'm saying that is it possible that the Trump administration?
Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
Yes, I mean, come on, Batman. We're talking about what Batman with Christian Bale, the first one, The Dark Knight. They developed a weapon.
They had the cell phone technology
with the boils water to destroy people in the desert.
All Trump and not Cuba supported the FBI's investigation down to whatever they wanted, and nothing was found.
Right, but we don't have facts to corroborate that.
I got facts to corroborate this. Actually,
we just have to say it is a political thriller.
Okay, and then back to your other country, I guess, to keep this all going, Iran, right? Obama caught a lot of flack for his deal with Iran, right? That it was weak, that it was short-sighted, that they would just lie to us and not keep their promise, and no matter how many inspectors we would send, that they would just keep their nuclear programs going and they would keep enriching plutonium, et cetera, et cetera. Like you just said, how do we keep North Korea in check if a deal is made? It would have to be something similar to the Iran deal, right?
Yes.
So then again, we're going to see the blatant hypocrisy of the GOP in which no matter what Obama did, it was never good enough. But if Trump proposes it, it is fine and it will fly, even though it's literally might look like the same deal with maybe you could say that someone more aggressive than Iran, someone more unstable than Iran that we should worry about. And again, it's just a hypocrisy thing, which we talk about a lot.
By the pastor of the evangelical churches.
Yeah, which they just want the leadership of Trump and they don't care about his indiscretions and blah 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 whatever.
But again, values voters.
So the North Koreans are baiting Donald Trump. This is an invitation from them. It's not like Donald Trump proposed this meeting. They invited him through South Korea. We kind of saw that it was working up with the delegations that were meeting. The South Koreans first said that, okay, we're going to meet with the North Koreans. And then us being close allies to South Korea, of course that message is going to get passed along to Donald Trump. And he's going to be like, how can I steal the limelight here? The North Koreans are baiting Donald Trump, and they're going along with China to drive a wedge between the U.S., South Korea, and Japanese alliance. They do not want the United States to have anti-nuclear missile shields there that protect Japan and South Korea and our other allies. They do not want 30,000 troops sitting on the 38th, 39th parallel. They do not want Americans that close to the Chinese or the Russian borders. So there is an incentive that the Chinese would be backing this because they're trying to explore the rest of the world right now. I mean, I want to talk about that later when we get to things like tariffs and the rise of fascism towards the end of the episode. But the Chinese are, as you've mentioned several times, playing the long game. The North Koreans are playing the long game, and Donald Trump can't see past 2 days.
But look,
it's not just Donald Trump, though. I think
the administration. The way the government is set up right now.
It's been previous administrations as well, too, though.
That's what I'm saying. I think we have an American problem of like, goldfish-itis, right? Like where all the fish and
should key that term.
Goldfish-itis. I like that. I agree. Look, like you just said, and like Trump saying, other administrations have failed, and that's true. They've been trying the same approach for 3 decades now, and it hasn't worked. So maybe a fresh approach is needed, and maybe they're calling it a maximum pressure approach is what the White House is officially coining it.
2 words. Broken clocks.
Why broken clocks?
Right, twice a day.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Well, I mean, listen, it was a bloody nose approach for the first time, so this time they just used different words.
All right, but look, we've been speculating a lot about what North Korea might want or not want or what their intentions are. What do you both think it would take, concession-wise and promises from both sides to make this work, or what can you stomach? Like, what would make you feel like it's safe? Because there's some people that are saying North Korea has to be they got to give up all their weapons, they got to, stop their nuclear program, halt it 100%, and anything less of that it's a loss. And like you just said, we don't think North Korea is going to give up their weapons. Maybe they'll stop their research, but they're not going to give up missiles that
They'll
they've
probably
already...
do what Iran did and said, well, okay, we'll just do it for peaceful energy purposes. And then they're going to say, well, then you have to withdraw your troops from South Korea because they threaten us, or not, just like the Russians asked Obama to do, don't build a nuclear defense system in South Korea.
But
I mean, you already saw in the beginning of his administration, he told the South Koreans they got to start paying for more of their defense.
But isn't part of what the South Koreans were saying is that North Korea understands that the South Korean and American missile exercises will still continue?
Yeah. But
yeah,
I think those are the exercise scheduled for this spring.
Yeah, the North Koreans are still going to continue their exercise. I mean, just last or a couple years, 2 years ago, they launched an artillery attack on an unpopulated island that was in South Korean territory.
So I guess the main problem with the North Koreans having nuclear power is that they, even if they may not do something, their weaponry could get into the hands of some unsavory.
Well, they've been selling to Syria for a while
now, right? I'm saying.
The North Koreans sell their weapons to Syria. They sell their weapons to Egypt. And despite the U.S. saying we're going to stop sending economic and military aid to these countries, they still do it because they still value a trusted, long-standing relationship with the North Koreans over a sporadic, untrustworthy relationship with the United States, whose leadership changes every 4 to 8 years, and now because of Donald Trump, has no obligation to honor the agreements or treaties or obligations set forth by a previous administration. I think that that's one of the worst things that we have about Donald Trump is how much he hates Obama and is so adamant on overturning everything he did, regardless of how good it was for the country or for the world or for world peace. He wants to put his name on it. He wants to have been the one that does it. And if he can't have it, he wants to overturn it. And it makes us look terrible to the rest of the world to think that any deal an American president makes with you is not concrete. It's not
subject to whoever gets elected.
It's subject to the whims of a political party 4 or 8 years down the road.
Which is a point that you've brought up plenty of times in the show.
And this is like this. So here's the thing. Trumpism will live on long past Trump being impeached or losing an election or filling out 2 terms. However it ends, this is we're past a certain precipice, right?
Yeah.
Like this sense of instability in the world are not looking to America for guidance or to be the sane person in the room. Every national leader right now is having to have contingency plans of, well, what do we do now that America's not in the forefront? Maybe that's a good thing, but that's a drastic change, and that is because of Trump. And if we think that that's a good thing, then, you know.
Well, that'll segue. Okay, that's a perfect segue into what my response to my own question would be.
Are you talking to yourself?
Yes. I'm having a little conversation.
It's not a problem to talk to yourself. It's when you answer yourself back. And that sounds like what
he can talk to himself because, I mean, talking to the microphone, you hear it in the headphones. I mean, it's a circuitous conversation.
No, I think he looks in the bathroom mirror and talks to himself.
You're good enough. You're smart
enough. Are you putting cameras in my bathroom?
I have cameras everywhere, buddy.
Damn it, man. He can't trust you, bro.
There's camera in the camera. I am not rooting against Donald Trump, by the way.
No, I'm not rooting against him either. And what I think I want to see happen is, and I know in most circles this might seem like the weak approach, but I would say that Kim Jong-un is going to be there probably for the next, 40, 50 years. How old is he? He's in his 30s?
Yeah, unless something should befall him.
Which it won't. I mean,
come on. He was in college in 2000, so I guess he's about 5 years older than me. So he's about 36, in his mid-30s. 37.
Okay. So, another 50, 60 years. All I'm saying, he's going to be there, right? That's how it works for them, right? We're going to have these changing of presidents and administrations and different policies, whatever. What I think needs to happen is that we need to accept him as a political actor and stop putting him in the fringes. Yeah, we don't agree with him. Yeah, he's a fucking lunatic and a psycho and he's hurting his people. But that's how he wants to run his country. Okay, let the people change and let other things.
What if Seth Rogen and James Franco just kill him?
In the interview? I haven't seen the movie.
What if he meets with Donald Trump and he's actually a robot with poison on his hands, and if the poison doesn't work, he just explodes? I mean, they're going to be over there. It's not like he's being invited to the United States. Trump is going to go over
What
there.
if
Yeah,
as
which
his
is crazy to me.
contingency plan, though, we plant a bomb inside Dennis Rodman.
And then when he meets the real one, then we set that one off.
They send Donald Trump over a can of Diet Cock and a burger with a bomb beef patty.
We are officially off the rails.
We are officially off the rails.
That's your new show.
Yeah.
That's a good title, actually.
Off the rails. It'd be a segue off the rails. What would it be about though? Just people telling random stuff like
I think so.
Like maybe Barron isn't Donald Trump's.
We all pick an
maybe
an administration official and we have a conversation as them.
No.
And we're trying to figure out some
How about
crises in the
this?
world.
How about we should just do like an Alex Jones style show and it's all conspiracy theory?
Oh, yeah.
Off the rails.
But then we have to
There's fluoride in the butter.
We have to do a lot of yelling.
There is fluoride in the butter. and don't forget chemtrails.
That's true. Chemtrails and such.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Loch Ness Monster, I guess we'll bring that one.
Next.
Huckabee Sanders, right?
No. Stormy.
Well, it is.
It is.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Technically,
Huckabee
Stormy.
Get your shit together, Joe.
That's her name now.
Huckabee Sanders.
Yeah.
All right.
Huckabee Sanders.
So up until Wednesday afternoon, in our opinion, or at least in my opinion, Sarah Huckabee Sanders had been batting 1,000.
They really did a good job with leveling out
If there was a competition for who would you want telling the best lies for your administration, she would be my pick.
With a straight face. Hold on, I'm sorry, guys.
Well,
do we have this week as a topic the drunk guy that was the ex-Trump?
We could bring it up now.
We were talking about Nunberg.
Yeah. Okay.
We were talking about
bring it up now.
We could bring it up absolutely now because
it makes sense.
Well, it's a terrible thing to say.
You absolutely keep cutting me off, but thanks.
Yeah, well, I'm taking
I started the
pages out
cutoff,
of
so
yeah.
No, one of the favorite Nunberg quote, and we can lead right into this.
Okay, Joe, go because you actually know it verbatim, and it's such a good quote.
Cut his mic.
I'm giving you a single shot.
No, that's okay. No, I think it's terrible. I feel horrible that I laughed at this, but I mean Nunberg is quoted as having said to the accusations from the White House that he's a drunk and an alcoholic and not to be believed, that she needs to shut her fat face, not because she's fat, which she is, but because she talks too much.
Because she's fat and a slob.
Yeah, and well, I gotta paraphrase a little bit because I already felt terrible enough because now I sound like Donald Trump talking about Rosie O'Donnell.
Oh,
so I felt horrible because that's just a terrible thing. But he's just like, listen, you want to come after me? I will go to war with the White House right now. I will come after Donald Trump. I will come
definitely shit-faced though.
According to Mueller, he is. He showed up despite saying he would rip up a subpoena.
Hey, just because he looked a fool doesn't mean he didn't have something to say. He was just drunk.
I'm
probably
just
got liquid courage.
He has an axe to grind the same way
the
Mooch has an axe to grind against General Kelly.
Mooch.
I don't know, man. I'm just saying he had something to say and he felt he could say it and he needed a couple of drinks to get the courage to say it.
Hey, listen,
and then he spent a fucking day doing it.
He'll come after you if you call him an alcoholic.
First of all, CNN probably put alcohol in his CNN mug so they could get a better interview.
Probably, here you go. Don't worry about
it.
We're trying to sober you up here with some coffee. That's what it is.
It's Cafe Patron.
But yo, back to her batting average, okay? She was doing a stellar job, deflecting like a pro, lying for Trump every day, day in and day out, and she finally made a mistake.
You're gonna every once in a while.
On Wednesday, she inadvertently admitted that Trump had won through litigation against Stormy Daniels. Basically admitting... Arbitration. Sorry, arbitration. Basically admitting and backtracking the position which the White House had maintained up to that point that Trump had never, this never happened. But now we know that Trump, under the alias of David Dennison... paid her...
Not to be confused with Dirk Diggler or David Duke.
Dirk Diggler. I love that name, man. Paid her $130,000 to keep her mouth shut about an affair that they had.
But that was Michael Cohen, not Trump.
Apparently, Trump had no knowledge. And if it was Michael... Whatever. The point is she backed him into a corner. She's beating him at his own game because no matter how you look at this now, everyone broke the law. If it was Michael Cohen,
everybody broke the law. Everybody's going to jail.
She's beating him off with both hands.
Fucking Joe, that was awesome, dude. If Michael Cohen truly paid with his own money and set up this whole LLC or whatever, he could be disbarred. That's breaking.
And he did it through a Trump organization email. As well.
Exactly that. Or if Trump did know and then used election money to do it, then he broke election finance campaign rules.
Finance laws.
Yeah, finance laws. That mouthful. So again, he's really now backed up into a corner, and if he wants to take her to court to disprove that this happens,
Please.
now exactly
Please do
now he would have to admit in court that he is David Dennison, that he didn't sign this, and
Yeah, if
it doesn't matter what happens now. He's fucked.
Non-disclosure agreement no longer
true.
applies.
Yeah, this is true now.
It does, and you see a pattern here. He loves forcing women to sign non-disclosure agreements. All of his ex-wives, every woman he's ever touched, has an NDA.
Melania.
And Melania. Well,
You think Ivanka has
she's
one?
just not allowed to speak. Period.
Dude, she's been MIA since all this.
She's
been
a
out.
POW.
I kind of feel bad for her, to be honest. She's
MIA POW. It's one
Okay,
flag.
Hold on. Here's
It's
the
one
thing.
big black flag.
I want to go on record saying I feel sorry for Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Don't do it.
You know how hard it is to manage all them lies.
What do you
That's
mean
a
manage all
hard
them
job.
She's a
lies?
fucking pro.
She
though,
got
man.
$100,000 to hire a hairdresser.
I'm just saying it's
I'd
hard.
lie
Her
for
dad
$100,000.
is Mike Huckabee.
Never forget.
Never forget Mike
With
Huckabee.
a face like that, you can't forget.
That literally
She
looks like
her
Mike
dad.
Huckabee's face if he was
With
a woman.
wig.
All right, but let's keep the.
It doesn't matter what she
insults-
looks like.
Let's
It
keep
matters
the
what she
insults-
says.
Yes, this is what I'm saying. Let's keep the insults to her horrible character.
Oh, I thought you said her
Doesn't matter
horrible
how
face.
she looks.
No, she's a person. She's a person, and she took a
She's
job.
Skilled human being.
She took a
and
job.
I don't think anybody could do that job. Look how clumsy Spicy looked doing it.
I see.
He couldn't do it, man.
She goes out
I
there
think
with a
I think
straight
I think
face.
Spicy had a soul, which is why he couldn't do it.
It was burning him up on the inside.
Yeah.
You could tell.
I think Sarah she might have made a deal with a crossroad demon. You know,
I think her
climb
dad
the corporate
exorcised
ladder.
not just the demons, but the soul from her very
her
body.
He took it a step further.
Yeah.
You know.
My
And,
daughter shall have no soul, and she will speak only when told by the president.
But Trump is mad at her apparently. I know Trump. I know Joe had her in the running for the new communications director.
It's a possibility still.
Probably,
She
but
makes it. She makes it through his
replacing
scorn.
Hope Hicks.
He's placing what?
Yeah,
Replacing Hope Hicks.
which hasn't left
yes,
yet,
yes.
but will be leaving soon.
But now, so here's the thing. I think that may still happen because it actually may be like, you fucked up. I don't want you on camera anymore. So here, go do this job behind the camera.
If it is, that would be a really big misstep on Trump because,
She's a
again, how
shark.
many lies has she said for him? I saw the press conference yesterday, and I'm waiting for her to
She
break.
will make
They
you
were
feel
trying to
bad for calling her out.
They
on
were
a
trying
lie.
to trip her
That's
up.
serious.
They were trying to trip her up constantly, just road traps. Nope, dodge, out of the way, block. Like she was just
Stop.
on freaking point. And for Trump to just be mad about this one mistake, I can see, but to punish her over it, that would be a mistake
Listen,
on his part.
Even the
But
Jedi,
especially when
every
he's
now and
losing
then miss a
everyone around.
laser blast, and they get hit and they go down. I mean, you can only block and deflect so many shots before
Yeah.
one lands, and the stormtrooper
And how do you
sitting there
keep
like,
all this bullshit in
I didn't
line?"
even know I could do this. I wasn't even looking. And that's the reporter, because do we even know the name of the reporter that perhaps tripped her up? No, but we know
No.
that she tripped and almost fell. And it's kind of like in a scary movie when you're trying to flee danger. And no matter what movie it is, no matter who the character is,
it catches
someone
up
will
to you.
always trip and fall to try and create some kind of
But see, in those
anxiety.
movies, that's because they're running with heels in the woods.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's also true.
Or they choose, instead of running out the door, they choose to run into the basement or something like
I
that.
picture
and
that Sarah stands up there in Crocs.
then-
I've never seen her
She's
feet.
been looking really, she's been looking really put together lately.
Because Trump wants all the women around him to do everything they can to look pretty. I mean, what's her name? Kellyanne Conway. If you can't do it the right way, do it the con way.
I'm gonna reserve my comments on this right now.
I'm just saying, she was. I mean, you could see how she was before, and then after she joined the administration, you can see what Sarah looked like in the beginning, and then after she joined the administration. Every woman that works for Donald Trump has to be pretty.
What if
has
he
to be
just
well put
wants you
together.
to be at the top of your game?
Because
There's
that's
nothing
not
wrong
your
with that.
game. The game is not
No,
focusing
but-
2 hours
but-
on the mirror
but it's-
and doing your
it's-
homework.
but part of the game is presenting yourself.
That is
it's like
not.
It's like,
true.
you know, the clothes make the person.
So I guess
You know what I'm saying?
Steve's Trump today.
I suppose.
I guess, right?
Watch your mouth.
The clothes,
I don't
the
know.
clothes make the man as long as they're Donald Trump apparel.
And made in China.
Made in China.
In
I'm
China.
just here to make things interesting. That's all.
All right, Trump.
That is interesting. You are.
What
correct.
do we have more on this, or are we moving?
No,
on?
I mean
Korea-
not really. It's just, I mean, anyone wants to add to this? I think it puts Trump in a position that hasn't been explored because of North Korea. But once this kind of calms down and whatever Stormy decides to do and how she decides to move forward, this will come up again. I just think it was interesting that Sarah messed
it
up.
happens the exact same week that Stormy Daniels' issue comes up. Is the same week that they're like, okay, we're going to North Korea, everybody. Everybody
your
follow me.
bags.
Let's go. We're going to North Korea.
Stormy can't get us
one
there.
place you can't get the internet.
I don't know that that those are related. And look, I also will.
I don't
say
think
that
so. I'm just looking around. I don't think so.
Stormy Daniels is basically like, I don't care about this $130,000. You can have it back because they're going to pay me $1 million for a book deal. But that doesn't matter.
And she won't even have to take her shirt off.
As long as, if this exposes some law breaking, then we should hear about it. I'm
telling you what, her and Anastasia, the Belarusian model, are going to end up in a ditch somewhere if they don't speak quickly. They need to get this over with and don't be holding out for $2 million. Take the $1 million and run.
I think the Anastasia person, in what country is she?
She's from Belarus, but she's being deported from Thailand.
Right. So I think Stormy Daniels will be fine just because, America.
No storm lasts forever.
But the chick from Belarus, I don't know, which is scary and sad and wow.
I'm scared for her.
And like on a serious note, the fact that like we're joking about this because it's hilarious, but like the fact that
this basement is bomb-proof, right?
I hope so. But the fact that people may like end up in body bags over this is
listen. The DC madam hung herself because she was about to expose an entire list of clientele in the DC area. And suddenly she decided that life wasn't worth living anymore.
What I will say,
read into that what you may.
All my conservatives and evangelical friends, was Neil Gorsuch worth all of this?
You had to bring him up. I almost went a week without.
See, I paused. I had to look up. I'm like, oh my god, he said his name.
I'm sorry.
He's the boogeyman.
No, you really have to ask yourself, at what point, how much of your morals or values do you give up to say that, well, he supports these policies, right? And I'm not comparing Trump to Hitler, right? But what if
You're not.
I'm not at all.
You're not.
But what if
wink?
What if Hitler? No wink, no wink at all.
Wink,
but what
wink.
if Hitler just gave you all your conservative principles? What if Hitler appointed all conservative justices on the Supreme Court? What if Hitler got rid of abortion? Would you be okay with it?
The GOP would say hindsight is 2020, right?
I don't know, man. I'm just saying, like, at some point,
because basically they did. Basically, Germany did give Hitler everything. Oh, he gave everything to his people, though, and they gave him.
What do you know? What he did?
They consolidated.
He burned
his power.
down the Bundestag. He
after he consolidated power, and
that's
through fear.
how he did
it.
Yeah,
through fear. It's through fear division.
It's a tax. It's turning the people against each other. When we get to the fascism issue, I want to lay into this, but that's exactly how you do it. And Donald Trump is watching Turkey. He's watching China, the Philippines. He's watching Russia. He's watching all these places, and he's seeing, okay, how do we do it? How do I do it? How do I do it? And he's waiting for an in. He's waiting for something. He's waiting for something big. And maybe the North Korean issue is the first part. Maybe we'll go over there and some North Korean guard will fire at the president and they'll flee on Air Force One, and the U.S. military will be, everybody's all up in arms and everybody forgets about everything. They're like, give the president all the power he needs. Let him do whatever he has to do. They attacked us.
You know what? There is a lot of talk about this, and it does tie in well with the topics at the end of the show. So do you guys want to knock out the Senate race in Texas first?
Yeah, let's just
get into the meat of the issue.
Let's just get rid of Ted Cruz.
All right, cool. So moving on for now. Congressman Beto O'Rourke, or Beto. No, I'm pretty sure it's Beto, right? Beto O'Rourke.
Beto. Yeah, it's Beto.
Is it Beto?
Yeah, I don't think he's Hispanic.
He's not. He's Irish. He's fourth generation Irish.
Keep saying it with a Hispanic accent.
Well, because
you're gonna give away the fact that he might be Hispanic.
Oh, people don't know I'm Hispanic. I thought it's pretty freaking obvious. But anyways, I think it's Beto. Now I'm gonna look it up in interviews. I don't know how he says it. Because it helps him with I guess, his constituency
Yeah.
in
Well,
Texas.
Ted Cruz
And
actually called this out, though. He said,
Yes,
"Do
I
not
was
be
gonna get to
fooled about
Yeah.
his name," and he's just sort of pandering and playing identity
Yeah.
politics. What do you guys think about that?
Okay, I think the only reason he went for that is because
He forgot what his own real name was.
he forgot his name is Rafael. No, it's because O'Rourke has been out fundraising him. He's been ahead of him in the polls, head-to-head matchups. There's a lot of hype around O'Rourke in the Democratic Party. They're seeing him as an up-and-comer. Texas has been leaning purple the last 2 elections, and they're kind of seen as a new wave in Texas, and they were excited about him. Primary just happened this past week. Cruz, won over 80-something% of the GOP votes in his primary. Beto only took 62%. People were not expecting that number. They're expecting a much higher number. But due because of his name, it hurt him in the border counties in Texas that were mostly Hispanic communities. He lost those to someone pretty much unknown. Some woman, I forget her name, a Hispanic woman who was running, and she pretty much won all those border counties, and she had no business winning them.
Primary though.
In a primary, but what they're saying now is that his name recognition is going to be something that hurts him long term in Texas, and I think that's why Cruz, even in the face of hypocrisy, even though he himself calls himself Ted instead of Rafael, found an opening to attack him on, and he's going to lay into him and has been laying on him. And this made me think of something that Greg had when we had Greg on the show that one time, my friend. He brought up that now there are no real conversations to be had in interviews. It's almost like these politicians show up and no matter what you ask them, they're just going to go into their talking points. And I saw Ted Cruz being interviewed, I think it was by Jake Tapper.
Well, I want to 1 second. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
This was my problem with Greg's assertion.
Okay.
I feel like he posed that as though that was the fault of the politicians, when we in fact live in an outrage culture where you cannot say anything remotely off script of the either left or right doctrine, and if you do, you get torn apart, and then it's just an avalanche effect because of this crazy echo chamber that happens, and then you'll lose sponsorship all because like 10 people online got upset, and then the Huffington Post reports that Twitter is going crazy over something, and now sponsors and advertisers are pulling out. So we have conditioned politicians to be this way. We get the politicians that we sort of ask for directly or indirectly.
I agree and I disagree to a point, because I think the fault does lay some, at least, with politicians themselves, who always presented themselves to be perfect people, to
Because
almost be
what
non-human.
Pretending they wanted, though.
Probably, but I mean, they play a part in it too, right? And I think that's what Donald Trump tapped into this past election, without getting it off into another tangent, is that you could just be, I guess, a normal human and be a leader, and you don't have to be this person who just says everything robotic, like, to stick to these points because that's what people want to hear. And I think people are getting tired of that, and 2016 and that election and Trump is a testament to that. But back to this, Cruz is now shamelessly using this to get ahead now with the Hispanic community in Texas, because in the interview, the guy basically asked him straightforward, aren't you being a hypocrite? Your name is Rafael, you go by Ted. How can you now go back and blame someone else for not using their real name, which his name is Robert?
He's like, because I'm going after white people. And he's going after
so what he turned, so his answer had nothing to do with answering the question at all. His response was, well, my dad was an immigrant, and my dad came here with no money, and I put myself up through college, and my dad worked really hard, like all these immigrants, and basically went to the whole cookie cutter thing, which every Hispanic family thinks they want to hear, or what politicians think we want to hear, and that was his answer. When he pressed him again, but why? But completely avoided the question again and went right into his talking points. Well, I'm a second generation this, and my dad came here with nothing. And so again, it's like there is no real conversation anymore. He knows he's wrong. He knows this is hypocrisy, but it's pushing forward his talking points, and he found a chink in his armor, and he's going after that now. And I think that's why he did what he did.
Well, I think Ted Cruz just assumes that he's going to win because it's Texas and he's a Republican, and he's known. He ran for president. Notably, was the last one in the race against Donald Trump.
Does have a last name that resonates with Hispanics.
It does. It's Cruz.
Yeah.
Whatever. But O'Rourke sounds pretty white to me. So
Pretty fucking Irish.
exactly. So I mean, like there is that dichotomy right there. Now you've got Hispanic Republican versus white Democrat in Texas, where nobody treads on anybody, and identity politics are very important in a state that's ranked among the lowest in the country in education, in healthcare, in freedoms, in workplace. So you've got Ted Cruz running up against a guy who's raising more money than him, pound for pound, in the long run, claiming not only that he's misusing his name, but also claiming that he's getting support from outside sources, from outside of Texas. And all these liberals from the north are coming down when he's raising a lot of domestic money in state. And Ted Cruz is backed by the NRA, which is out of Fairfax, Virginia, where he's backed by conservative super PACs and the Congressional Leadership Fund and all these such things, which are pouring millions of dollars. And that's the one thing the GOP has done over the past century is they've consolidated as much wealth into the GOP as possible so that it doesn't matter how few people are actually in their party or vote for them as long as they have the money to back it up, which is why I wanted to talk off of this, that if somehow a Doug Jones situation is pulled off and Beto gets elected in place of Ted Cruz,
that is unlikely, but
that's what they said in Alabama. Now Ted Cruz
but
may not
Ted
be
Cruz,
a pedophile.
That's
but
what I was saying.
Yeah, Ted Cruz may not be a pedophile,
asshole,
but he is
but he is
disgusting
definitely
being.
But he definitely swings a little too right for a state that has been going purple.
Yeah.
The last 8 years.
Of course, though, with things like gerrymandering of districts and stuff, the way Texas's districts are drawn, luckily it's a statewide race, so that whoever just wins the flat out numbers wins. But the way that things are targeted, advertisement and media and things like that, the actual lower level Republicans that are in office throughout the counties, municipalities, and local governments, they're the ones that are going to be pushing for Ted Cruz and no one else. You can't vote for a Democrat. Just don't vote for a Democrat. Now, the GOP is very, very concerned about this, and the Senate the Senate Republicans, the RNC, are pumping money into Ted Cruz's campaign. It's similar to what's happening in Pennsylvania right now in a suburb of Pittsburgh. There is a special election to fill a seat in Congress. It was held by a far-right conservative that was anti-abortion and anti-everything liberal, and then turns out he tried to get his mistress to have an abortion.
Of course.
And she told everybody, and so he left his seat, and there's Representative Saccone is now sitting there trying to win back a seat that has already been redrawn out of the district map for 2020. So this is a seat that will no longer be in existence in 2020, but will play an important role in the 2018 midterm elections.
Why?
Because this is a district that Donald Trump won by 20 points in the general. It's the heartland of blue-collar, white voters that love steel and manufacturing and that love America kind of thing. Like this is a stereotypical, this is the heartland of America kind of thing. If they lose this district, despite the fact that it will not matter after 2020, it is proof that their impregnable Rust Belt wall is breachable. That the Democrats can get in. It's the iceberg to the Titanic. That there is a way to make it through the idea that Democrats cannot convince white working class voters to come back to the party. You had Joe Biden over there saying that this is the holy grail of the Democratic Party to take back the white working class voter. You've got the GOP saying things like, if we lose this, we're going to lose the House. That the Super PAC, Congressional Leadership Fund, is spending somewhere close to $10 million, among other super PACs, to win this race, is going so far as to send mailers to Democrats showing the Democratic candidate firing a gun, saying that he supports gun rights, to try and water down his support in his own party. That's what Republicans are doing. The RNC is spending $900,000 on a race that they know doesn't really matter, and they know they need money for November to try and win this. They're outspending Democrats 10-1, but the odds are still evening. There's a chance that this 33-year-old Democrat named something Lamb, Connor Lamb, I think it is. Connor Lamb, 33 years old, is going to actually take this district, hold it for 2 years, and then go up against whoever is holding the new redrawn district in Pennsylvania. There are so many different things that can repercussions that can come from this election.
No, and I think Ted Cruz sees the writing on the wall as well. Everything you've just said, because he went. I forget where he was speaking this week in Texas, but he told everyone that the hate from the left towards Trump is so big, and the opposition to him is so big, that if the GOP, even falls asleep slightly, if they take a nap in November,
Can't fall asleep at the wheel.
that it's over for them. That they will lose the House, they will lose the Senate, and I don't think this will happen.
Yeah.
But what he ultimately said was that if Nancy Pelosi wins back the speakership, which will happen if she takes, if the Dems take back the House, that she would automatically and quickly put, present articles of impeachment for Trump.
And
I don't think she would, to be honest. But of course, there's that fear tactic. Yeah, it's saying if we're gonna protect Trump, if we're gonna protect the direction which we think the party's going in now, we can't fall asleep at the wheel. Because
do you need so the House presents articles of impeachment,
and the Senate
actually
tries
runs the trial,
removal.
Yes.
Now, what sort of vote do you have to get in the Senate to actually impeach? 2/3. So that's just not going to happen.
67 votes.
No.
Yeah, that can't, because even if they take back the House, it'll be like a 51.
Well, you have to think. Bill Clinton was impeached. He was impeached by the House, but he was not removed by the Senate.
And you only need a simple majority to run the impeachment hearings.
No, it's 2/3 of both houses.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're not even going to get that. It's
No.
not like they're going to win the House.
You don't know. Listen,
by...
there were plenty of Democrats in Congress during the Clinton administration, but just like a jury is supposed to weigh the facts, despite the fact that a jury can acquit someone of a crime.
Yeah, because being impeached doesn't mean that you're going to get it.
No, I
It's
understand
just
that,
a formal accusation of a criminal.
What I'm saying is, do we really
have the numbers
that there will be the
No,
numbers
the
for
numbers don't
an
exist.
impeachment?
But without the numbers, I don't even think it's a possibility, for the simple fact that, look, after everyone taking office after the 2018 election will be taking office in January of 2019, right? That's a year before the elections again in 2020, right?
Okay.
I'm just being practical. If I was Nancy Pelosi, or if I was leadership, why would I, right fresh from winning back both houses, why would I then make a show of, I guess maybe in these days it would be something more welcome, but I wouldn't want to make a show of it and go after Trump in an impeachment when he has 1 year left where the voters could take him out, where it won't look like the party kicked him out. And what I would just focus on now is I have control of this House. Mm-hmm. I'm going to turn over everything he's done the last 2.5 years, and I'm going to get some work done.
I agree 100%.
So in 2020, we have something to show for and back our candidate with, aside from we were the party responsible for kicking out Trump when the people that voted for him didn't want him out. There's no point.
I agree with you. 100%.
If he wins 2020... those articles of impeachment are on the table.
Pelosi
flat out, day one.
She's going to change
day
all
one,
the heads of every
right
committee.
there.
Every committee chairman's going to change.
Yeah, and they're going to attack Trump in other ways. The same way they attacked Obama after the 2010 midterms, that's the same way they're going to attack Trump. And that's the best way to attack Trump. Fuck impeachment.
Maybe, and I would prefer if Trump is out of office, is that he got voted out and not impeached out, just because you'd never hear the end of it.
Exactly.
But
so why impeach?
That said, there are why kick out Al Franken, right? There are gonna be people that say, we put you in here specifically to do this, and you didn't do this. And even though they know it wouldn't go forward, I think the article of impeachment get put on the floor, even though they know it's getting voted down.
But they've already done. They've already
Al
done
Franken resigned. He resigned
was forced
his
to
position.
resign, though.
He wasn't. I mean, he was strongly encouraged to, but he still could have said no. He still could have.
He should have.
But it was not good for the
We're
party.
Beating a dead horse. But
they had to show that they were willing to stand by their convictions by asking him to resign. He followed suit with it, and as a private citizen, it's likely he can do a lot more, especially when the election season comes up.
Fantastic, but they pushed him out.
They pushed him out, but he was not impeached or removed.
But the GOP's not going to push out Trump.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they don't have the 2/3 vote, right? We're clear on that. I'm saying that there will be a bill of impeachment put forth.
There's already been.
No, but there's already been.
But I'm saying they will vote on it.
Al Green of Texas, it got 50 some odd votes.
I'm saying that they will vote on it in the House, even though they know it can't go forward, just so they can say, to help them run in 2020, we came here to get him out. That didn't work. They knew it didn't work, but that doesn't matter. The ad is we tried to get him out. Now in 2020, we really got to get him out.
Well, 2020 is a different story.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say you're wrong because I've said you're wrong before and it hasn't worked.
But hold on, everybody. This is episode 19, March 10th, 2018. Mark your calendars. Remember, this is what I said they were going to do.
Yeah.
Now we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm taking
by
bets,
2020, Congress will have another 1/3 of the population flipped over. Every 2 years, 1/3 of the House changes hands.
Yeah.
So it's possible that you could have a 2/3 majority in at least the House.
That's
if Democrats push.
And there's enough Republicans that don't. I mean, a lot of the Republicans that don't like Trump are not running for re-election. So I don't know what the new people coming into Congress, if they,
2020 is going to be vicious. He's going to be challenged in a primary. Most of the time, you don't challenge a sitting president in the primary.
And you know what? And I think that would be worse than anything, right?
Is Jeff Flake going to be the challenger?
He's going for it.
He looks the part. He knows what to say. Border state, ties to the Hispanic community.
Is Tom Steyer going to run?
Who?
I don't even know who that is, so no.
That's the guy who runs all those commercials. Like, why is he still president?
Oh, the billionaire that's putting his own money.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. He definitely put his money.
Interesting personality.
No, and again, you said his name, and we were like, who? So I mean, that in itself, he's not trying, but he's definitely gonna like throw his weight around like the Koch brothers. He's probably gonna throw money to whoever he thinks.
He's making a play to run for president that is not working out as well as he would.
Well,
or maybe for like local office, maybe like a Senate run or something in the future.
You don't
listen.
Care
that's what Mitt Romney's doing. He's got himself back in the center stage by
I want him to win.
by going against Donald Trump publicly.
I want him to win.
He's got the money, and if he runs in Utah,
and he has a
Senate,
clout. He has a clout in Utah.
He will be elected.
What do you guys feel about?
He's going up for Orrin Hatch's
going
seat,
around
right?
the other day that because at one point Trump was considering Romney. Remember the infamous dinner?
Yeah,
the picture he's
for
like
Secretary of State.
Yeah,
and the Russians didn't want him because remember back in
Is that what happened?
In 2012, he said that Russia was the biggest threat. The biggest geopolitical threat out there, and Obama made fun of him. And now look at Russia.
Did we talk about this?
But maybe I don't remember. I don't remember what I had for breakfast, so you can't ask me. But what about that idea that the Russians just didn't want him, and so Trump was like, "Nah, we're not doing that."
I don't recall that being the reason. If that really was a reason.
No. I'm saying, what if? We don't know.
What if?
Putin could have done whatever he wanted. Donald Trump will just do what he wants.
Yeah. Look, I've been waiting for the time to, go into this, but this would be, another good segue. I read this really good opinion piece. I forget who wrote it. The first historian to write a book post-Obama presidency, recapping his presidency and rating him versus other presidents. And obviously the guy's a fan. He liked him. He said nice things about Obama.
Obama was just good.
I liked that he did, in a way, not blame. First of all, I like that he didn't blame Obama for Trump, which is the first person who has said it, and it changed my mind because I thought Trump was a reflection of Obama. His argument is that Trump has been forthcoming since Bush, since 2003, since 2004. Those divisive lines were drawn. Obama came in with hope in a moment when people didn't want it to erupt that way and held it together with, his hope this and hope that and
blackness. But
I
don't blame Obama for Trump. I blame the American people.
Well,
right?
and this is what this guy's saying, that our politics created Trump and has been forthcoming before Obama, and the only thing he blames Obama is his lack of sight in seeing that this might happen later into his presidency. No one saw this coming in 2008, so he's not saying Obama should have seen this. He's just saying that time and time again, Obama held out his hand across the aisle. Time and time again, he watered down his policies to try and meet the Republicans halfway. And they were slapping his hand left and right. No matter what you do, no. And then it got to a point where people in Obama's circle were going okay, dude, let's just do what you want to do now. Forget them. And part of Obama was always just maybe a hopeful naivete about that. No, we're going to do this right. We're going to be diplomatic about this. We're going to go through a proper channel. And he failed to capitalize on the momentum he had. And then in 2010, the Tea Party came and
and that's true though. Also in regards to Obama, his outlook on life, you got to understand. This is a guy who was the first black president, right?
Yeah.
This is a guy who started with nothing, ended up going to Harvard, becoming a law professor, fucking getting with Michelle Obama, right? and then you become the president, right? So of course that person's outlook on life will be one of hope, because things have basically worked out for him in life by doing the right thing. So I think that he thought, if I continue to do the right thing, that, in the end it'll work out.
Yeah.
Meaning he probably just had too much faith in humanity, a lot more than I have. Right? And I think that spoke to a lot of the decisions he made.
Spoke to me.
And again, as to quote T'Chaka, it's hard for a good man to be king.
I love that. Good way to tie that one in there. And again, I'll share it on the page, I guess, if anyone's interested in reading it later on. But the biggest thing I took from it, because it changed my opinion of who I guess where I laid the blame, was that Trump wasn't something that happened after 2010. It's been something that started happening a decade before then. And I guess we never really saw our divisions as that divisive or that far reaching until
social media made us very
probably
very small.
and then we saw all these divisions take a human form in Trump. And I think Obama was the last attempt at a deterrent for politics to change into what it became.
I don't think he's the last. However,
well, he was before this happened.
Are you saying that he's our Neville Chamberlain?
Maybe.
Or he's our...
No, I mean, I wouldn't call him Neville. I mean, he didn't just open the door and said here, but he did fail to see the things coming. Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Well,
one I guess last thing.
Yeah.
If we've been leading to Trump, right, and everything is progression, what comes next? Where do you go from here? Because I keep telling a lot of my liberal friends, don't think that if you get Trump out by election or impeachment, that's it.
That we get Jesus.
Something led us to this place. And I don't think that any of us are really addressing the factors that led up to where we are today.
Honestly, all of us would be very rich men if we could answer that question. But just like Dave Chappelle said, Bush was so bad and that he gave us Barack Obama. So Donald Trump is so bad. What will we get in return? Jesus, that just means Armageddon. And with the embassy in Jerusalem and going possibly to war with half the world and economic collapse in the near future and famine and starvation and everything, it does kind of seem like we are entering the end times. But every generation has said that about the generation they live in. And speaking of the end times and war with the world.
Are we starting a new tariff war?
Trade wars. Trade wars, episode 2.
There we go.
Attack of the Clones. Again.
So on Thursday, he made it official. There's a 25% tariff on steel imports and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports.
Aluminium.
Okay, so somebody's going to the UK soon, and now they want to start getting their pronunciations.
And he did exempt Canada and Mexico, which you made me, because you said he was legally binded to do so.
I thought you said he was legally blonde, but that's something
he is, or white. I don't know. Okay, so he pissed off the GOP. He pissed off our allies. He's definitely hedging and banking on that. This will help, and he is keeping a promise to voters in the Rust Belt and other working class communities that did come out and vote for him and pretty much gave him the presidency. And he's hedging on them at the expense of others. Will this pay off? What do you all see coming? I know we talked about it a little bit last week, but it is now official. Jeff Flake and other members of Congress have come out, said that this is the worst thing that could happen. American jobs are going to be lost. And that there's a very strong possibility that Congress will draft a bill or legislation that will limit or overturn these tariffs.
And his economic advisor quit over it.
Yes, which, Gary Cohn.
I honestly
So what's up, guys?
Okay, so starting right off the bat, I love that I studied constitutional law, and I think that it'd be very important for that to be something that's actually done in high schools and stuff. I don't know how this law existed in the first place. It comes from the 1930s, where the president is given this broad power to assign tariffs as a means of protecting national security. So if national security is undermined, you can use a protective tariff as a sort of weapon so you don't have to go to war. And it's just been abused. George Bush did it temporarily in the 2000s. And then, right at the end of his presidency, boom, recession. Right after massive tax cuts. This kind of a thing we've seen through history, that every single trade war going back hundreds of years always ends with civilian casualties, with increased prices for consumers, with possible recessions, possible depressions. I mean, the biggest one, and the one that everybody's dug up from the archives, is the Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930, which was a tariff assigned to 20,000 individual items that are imported from around the world that we slapped tariffs onto, and the world responded the same way it's responding now. Canadians stopped shipping stuff to us and started spending money in the British Empire. The Italians, who to that point were not supportive of the rise of the Soviet Union from the Communist Revolution in 1917, that they started now dealing with the Soviets. People pivoted away from America. Our exports dropped 61%. It's led into a depression. It was more of a recession that we didn't get out of until we ended the tariffs, so that we could start supplying lend-lease stuff and war supplies to our European allies. And even up to that point, we were still kind of in our protectionist mode, where Roosevelt was just like, I don't know if we should be getting involved here, but let's make some money while we're at it. So, I mean, in a small way, you can say the United States, in its attempt at protective tariffs, directly helped the rise of the Soviet Union. It also led to a rise in the nationalism and fascism that was born in Europe during this time. That these tariffs forced other countries that were investing in America to now have to go other places. Germany was near impoverished at that point, but because they had a huge industrial capacity, they now were able to start making things, manufacturing things, making money, generating wealth that they would probably not have been able to do had these other countries in Europe, prior to German, militarism, been focused on investing in the United States. I don't have the information directly in front of me about exactly how many jobs were lost during that, but I just think that it was one of the worst decisions you can make is a protective tariff. Now, the constitutional thing I have an issue with, and hopefully somebody eventually will correct me. Maybe I'll ask one of my professors later, but I've always assumed and felt that the Constitution was very clear that the Congress of the United States will develop all bills for taxation. That only Congress can do that. That they cannot, through Supreme Court decisions, abdicate their authority to do so to the president or executive branch, which leads me to believe that Congress should not be allowed to authorize the president to lay taxes on anything, even if a law was passed that gave him that power. It's not in the Constitution. It's just a federal law that could be overturned by the Supreme Court. Now, what you mentioned before, perhaps the Congress will try and pass some sort of a law or a budget or something that limits that, but unless they get over a veto proof, he's still going to be able to act on this. The only thing that could overturn this is a Supreme Court decision.
But they think they have a veto-proof majority. So, do you think they have enough Dems to jump on it?
Well, I mean, they might also have enough Republicans, because think about this, that a tariff like this is a tax. And a lot of Trump supporters don't understand the difference between a tax and a tariff. They're the exact same thing. But all of these Republicans and these GOPers who are like, free market, let the market decide how things are. No government intervention. They were against bailouts and were against any time the government steps in to influence the market. Is this not the government stepping in to influence markets?
It absolutely is.
Is this not an abdication of the free market system?
This is something that would be more common under a Democratic president. A lot of the Republicans in the House and the Senate have come out against it pretty feverishly. I know Paul Ryan tried to change his mind about it. I know a lot of the Republicans in Congress and the Senate, they saw that the leaving of Gary Cohn was kind of like a warning sign for them, because they lost their last champion within the administration that was pushing against these tariffs and against these, protectionist measures that are pretty much against the theology or the political identity of, the Republican Party. With that being said, it's going to help some people at the expense of a lot more people. Mm-hmm. And as you just brought up, the last tariff, and the inadvertent prop up of the Soviet Union And you said that it lasted for I think 4 years, but the repercussions were felt a long time after that.
Speaking of repercussions, I want to show you guys a video.
Okay,
It's about 1 minute long.
Sure.
I didn't know we got a video.
Hopefully this goes off without a hitch.
Is it going to be on that TV? Because
yeah, as a matter of fact, it will. Buddy.
Okay, Euro News.
All right, so there are like unintended effects of this, because we can lay tariffs, but what about the whole idea of a trade war is that there will be shots fired on both sides.
They'll come after us.
Always a civilian casualty.
Here is a European leader saying, hey, Trump, you want to do stupid stuff?
No, this is the leader of the European bank, I believe. Is your sound?
Three strikes if President Trump goes ahead with plans to impose import tariffs on steel and aluminium. The countermeasures envisaged by the European Commission president have iconic American companies in their sights. So now we will also impose import tariffs, he said in Hamburg. This is basically a stupid process, the fact that we have to do this, but we have to do it. We'll now impose tariffs on motorcycles, Harley-Davidson, on blue jeans, Levi's, on bourbon. We can also do stupid. We also have to be this stupid. Trump says 25% steel and 10% aluminium tariffs will safeguard American jobs, but Canada, the biggest steel supplier to the US, doesn't agree.
We are impressing upon the American administration the unacceptable nature of these proposals that are going to hurt them every bit as much as they will hurt us.
The IMF has expressed concern, and the risk of a global trade war has shocked markets. President Trump, though, remains defiant, saying trade wars are good and easy to win.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure he's been in so many trade wars.
Yeah.
But,
that didn't end in lawsuits.
No, he got
with him giving up money
he got
at the end of that.
from actually having to participate in the wars.
He got hand spurs for that one,
hand
you know.
spurs.
Hand spurs for the trade wars, you know.
They've never been good. They've never helped anybody. They've only hurt people. They cost everybody more money.
It's
like
the
money at the pump.
IMF has.
Sorry. Yeah, we were talking about it actually on the way here, and it kind of goes back to Cuba, where we were talking about before, and other North Korea even. All these sanctions that we impose, all these things, these measures that we take to try and control the direction other nations take, it does nothing but hurt the people. There is immense collateral damage when we make these decisions, and they never end up hurting the people in power. They never end up really crippling the people we aim to cripple. We end up crippling the populations, the people that can't now afford to now buy, whiskey or blue jeans or wine from California, or whatever the world is going to now do in response to something very stupid on the Trump administration. So, I think the video was on point. What Joe said before is on point. This is going to have unforeseen repercussions. And it's I don't think it's worth it. He's keeping a promise, and he's going to fall back on that. He's helping people that voted for him, and I get that, but at the expense of everyone else, and too many people at that.
Because look,
and I don't know what's going to happen.
There's so many companies out there that import steel, but supply jobs to people who use that steel, right? Mm-hmm. And this is not even.
It's like for every one person importing the steel, you've got 10 people that are taking that steel and turning it into something.
Exactly. And so, I get that it's a headline and this is the whole thing. This isn't even about those steel workers. Mm-hmm. It's about him. It's about him.
It is about him, of course.
I did this. And again, Joe, you brought up another way that if you wanted to impose some kind of tariffs, you could have did it smartly, right? But why?
Could have had Congress do it. You could have done it on things that actually aren't.
Or you could have subsidized the steel market. You just did all those tax cuts.
If we produced enough of everything in this country for stuff that we had a balance on the markets where there was a reasonable price for people to pay for things, that would be fine. But not only are they interrupting the free market right now, but he's deliberately undermining national security. He's using the tariffs, saying he's helping our national security, but then he's going to issue all these exemptions to Canada and to Mexico and maybe Australia and to anybody that provides stuff for our military. So, honestly, who are these targeting except to say that he's going to go to this district in Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh that we just talked about to campaign on the idea that he's helping the blue-collar steelworkers of America, and then he's going to leave and forget about them. And in 10 weeks, maybe the tariff will be over, or maybe he'll just decide on a bunch of new tariffs, and people start getting fed up with the fact that they eventually, penny by penny, are going to be paying more and more and more for things. You're going to see bond prices go up. Yields are going to go down. You're going to see stock market going with harder roller coaster turns. One thing that I thought of on the way here today was I was thinking about the economic collapse of the Soviet Union, 91, 92. We're talking about a country, the Soviet Union tried to go toe-to-toe with the United States for 40 years, investing in other countries, bringing other countries in its sphere of influence, sending money to Cuba and to North Korea, and propping up communist regimes all over the world, the same way the United States has been trying to do with democratically elected regimes, with buying up other countries, democratically elected regimes.
You mean CIA elected?
Yeah. So we were willing to continuously be in all these countries and to spend ourselves into spiraling debt to keep these places propped up so that we have them in their sphere of influence. So it would seem now that the Russians, even after having been continuously punished, were still willing to dope up their athletes in the Olympics. The smallest form of just insubordination, where they just don't care what anybody says. They're going to do what they want. They deliberately undermined our elections. In an official capacity, they invade other nations and just take things. He's propping up Bashar al-Assad in Syria. They are undermining democratic governments all over the world, installing dictators, supporting proxy wars against the United States, and they face no repercussions from us, even though we impose sanctions on them. It's almost thinking like, who do they think that they are? Do they think that they're us from 1960 to 1995? They're doing exactly what we did, and except this time, just like a pendulum swung from Obama to Trump, what if the United States economy actually does collapse? We're talking about a worldwide depression. The United States economy collapses on $21 trillion of debt.
Yeah.
That China, that Saudi Arabia, that all these other big investment groups outside the United States, they own our debt. What are we going to do when we collapse? When we can't afford to make the payments, or when Congress can't come to some kind of a budget?
Well, we haven't been able to make the payments for a while now, which is why we keep pushing.
We pay the interest on it.
Yeah,
that's all we do.
I think, again, this just goes to show what Trump does and doesn't know, or just a complete lack of understanding, because a lot of the people that are against the GOP bring up the fact that this will counteract any improvement to the economy that they feel their tax plan would have enacted, right? They feel that this is completely contradictory to their, to what Paul Ryan was pretty much salivating for his whole career, which just passed, and now Trump does this, which I think
Paul Ryan kind of jerks off at night about tax cuts.
Probably does, and now he's really upset that Trump took his Jergens from him, because now he's giving.
Here's the other thing about these tariffs and those tax cuts. I do find it funny that everyone realizes how bad these tariffs are, but didn't bat an eye and were going so crazy for tax cuts in this time. Right? These people who say that they're fiscally conservative, these people who know that we're like, you can't this is like accounting 101 or economics 101. Like, if the economy is on an upswing and we're in debt and you don't like debt, isn't the upswing the time to actually collect more money? And when the economy's on a downturn, then you'll cut taxes to put more money back into people's pockets, right? This right now is the time specifically not to cut taxes.
Yeah.
But everybody was on board for that. And again, this is what I mean. Like, who is your messenger? In the sense that, yes, we'll go along with whatever foolishness Trump does until it comes back to bite us. So yes, Trump had an ill-advised tax plan. They did that, and they were getting their tax cuts, so they went for it, and they would utilize the beast, and now the beast is out of control doing this.
And they don't know what to do. And we're not going to be, we are being left now alone in this situation. Maybe if our economy does go down, maybe we don't tank the rest of the world. As Trump was signing this, as this was becoming a reality, 11 nations were signing onto the Trans-Pacific Union Partnership, without the United States. Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, New Zealand, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, Singapore, and Vietnam, representing about 500 million people and 13% of the world economy, now have a trade deal with themselves, one of which we're not a part of. So again, we're
I mean,
falling behind in
there's always
various ways.
ascension. We could eventually accede to.
Yeah, but like we've
then we
mentioned in
weren't
the
the
past,
ones that did it.
Yeah, and we're catching up from behind, and these tariffs again, we're starting a trade war at a moment when all these countries are kind of banding together, and we're being the odd man left out. We hedged our position in Asia. We're giving up our position in Africa. It's just it's an interesting time. I want to see what happens. The beast is out of control, and I don't know what's going to happen now.
It's still a war, and honestly, I think if you're going to have these, thieves sitting in the Supreme Court that want to read the Constitution literally and not read it as a living document, Congress needs to authorize war. The president should not be able to engage in a trade war without the authorization of Congress.
So war is war. Even
war
if
is war.
Not militaristic.
War is war.
Okay.
And it is militaristic because, it's about national security. It's the only reason he's allowed to attach these tariffs. He's saying national security. National security involves military. He's the head of the military.
If this brings down the economy the way some people are saying it would, does this finally stick to Teflon Don?
Nope.
I don't know. Actually,
Spoiler
I think this is. The man considers himself the king of debt and the deal maker. You can't get out of this kind of debt. You can't get out of these kind of things. What if China recalls our debt? Well, they can't recall it, but they can certainly take all of the money that we're paying them to service the debt and start doing what they're doing right now. In Ethiopia, they're outspending the United States 30-1 on investments. We are spending $500 million. They're spending $19 billion, $15 billion improving the infrastructure of countries in Africa so that they own ports, so that they own airports, so that they own pipelines and power lines.
And that's the next big moneymaker.
There are
going to be Africa.
There are 1 million Chinese nationals living in Africa right now, just working and building things, and that's it. 1 million people that China just said, here, go build some stuff. They are buying a port in Djibouti. Djibouti is not just a funny word. It is a country on the Horn of Africa.
It's not Djibouti?
No. It is next to Eritrea. It's near the Persian Gulf. So Djibouti is a tiny little country that sits at the mouth of the Red Sea. It is an area...
Djibouti on the mouth?
Yes, Djibouti is on the mouth of the Red Sea. I know that sounds like a bad period joke, but... So this country is small. It's impoverished. It has very little resources, but what it does is has one of the largest ports because it's at the mouth of the Red Sea. Everything that goes to the Suez Canal, the British, the Italians, the French, the United States, anybody that needs to stuff anything into the Persian Gulf or get anything from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean has to go through here. Now, the Chinese government, which since everything is state-run there, own 23.5% of this one port and have now decided to invest $1.4 billion into Djibouti, which is 75% of their GDP. Just here's some money.
So they own it now.
They basically do. Now, they forced the government
By the way,
of Djibouti.
I just want to add one thing to this. This is what the new colonialism looks like.
Oh yeah,
it's not military colonialism anymore.
It's economic colonialism,
right?
Yeah.
And
they're taking resources from someone else.
Right, they're taking resources. They're getting certain people rich. They are making small investments, but they are retaining the control, and this is
and
all
they just have the money to spend.
100-year plan. They're essentially printing money. But to the whole idea of China calling back the U.S. debt, they're not going to do that, at least no time soon.
No, they're making so much money off the interest.
Not only that, the people, and I know a lot of the factories are like in India and Korea as well, but a lot of because we are a consumer-driven society, we buy a lot of the goods that people produce around the world, whether it is manufacturing or anything else. So if our economy tanks,
then we don't buy anything.
And they don't want that to happen. At least not until they feel like they could sustain the world economy on their own.
Well, the steel tariff, he says they aimed it at China, but China only exports about like 3% to the United States with regards to steel. Canada's the biggest supplier.
70% or some crap like that.
But you have to look past him. He's like a headline president.
Yeah,
right?
I know. But I mean, listen, what the Chinese government is doing is they're basically doing exactly what you said. They've figured out how to colonize the world. I mean, China was a major power in the world 4,000 years ago, and now it's come full circle, and they're big again. There's stories about how the Chinese Navy, hundreds and thousands of years ago, had the largest ships in the entire world, like that make the Nina Pinta and Santa Maria look like a
There's
little
stories
toy
that
boat.
they might have been the first people to reach here in the U.S.
But they did not want to be involved in the rest of the world. They wanted to stay in China, and the emperor sunk all the ships. He just scuttled them all. So now they've realized that the only way to colonize the world, that he who controls the seas controls the world. They are expanding their sphere of influence way beyond what anybody in America or national security advisors could have predicted before. They're building a strong navy. They're building islands. They are buying up ports in Africa. They have their only outside military base, which is in the Gulf of
By the
Aden.
way,
And Steve, how do you feel about
They're doing
that?
this in Jamaica also,
Yeah.
and all throughout the Caribbean islands.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about that? Because it is a form of colonization. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, they're enriching these countries. Like I was just reading about Rwanda and a couple of these countries in Africa that are now becoming, they're like not high-end resorts. They're bringing in tourism money. They're finally politically stable.
Okay.
Things like that. Like,
so here's the thing.
No, they have zero respect for human rights. So they might be making a couple people rich and putting some money into that, but most of the time they're indebting them. That's how they got that port in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was so
but I'm
indebted
not
to
talking
China.
about Canada. I mean, I'm not talking about China. I'm talking about the actual African countries receiving the money.
They're not receiving the money, though. These are just investments. China's like, I'll spend $1 billion building infrastructure, but you're going to have to now pay me for the electricity. You have to pay me for the operations, which goes well beyond the investment.
But when you build new infrastructure and when you bring in, and when you prop a country up, tourism booms, people want to do business there, visit there. It's long-term game too. It's not like you're just
Sri Lanka signed a 99-year lease with China to give them sole possession of the largest port in the country, this island off the coast of India, because they couldn't afford their debt payment to China. They're using debt to leverage these countries in Africa. I mean, they're not giving out grants; they're giving out loans.
Now, I do. So I actually have a few things to say about this, and I would recommend everyone read the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman. This is old shit. This is just coming out of the American playbook. That's the first thing, right? You are absolutely right. They're not giving them money. They're giving them loans that they know they can't pay back. And then they come to collect, and they don't collect with guns. They say, hey, just give us control of this, or we'll put a military base here, or whatever. This is old news. This is old stuff. But when we talk about if they're investing in infrastructure, you actually have to look at who is benefiting from the infrastructure that they put in place. You could put a resort there all day, and if the people who live in that country cannot afford to actually go visit that resort,
or even be allowed to be there,
right? Or they're just
which
there
happens in Cuba,
right? They're just there as the service. Then that's not really helping the people. Again, you're getting a few, rich families richer, but you're not really helping the country. And we can even go back to it. I don't know if this is on our list, but South Africa just voted to take back farmland from a lot of the I guess you would call them colonizers. I don't know, because I don't think that they were born during that time, but they said that historically this land was stolen, so we're taking it back. And I don't know the politics behind that, but I say all that to say, if you're making the brunt of the money that an investment brings in from another country, like you are the colonizer, and if you're using a resource, whether that resource is just geographical and a port, or that resource is coltan, or that resource is gold or diamonds, you are still taking from those people, right? And it'd be nice if we could all kumbaya, and China says, hey, we got money now, so we're going to lift you up and you help us out in the way that we can get helped out. But that's not really what's happening.
Okay, so
it's the Chinese government is a dictatorship. They don't care about the people of other countries. What can I get out of this? They're talking, everything the United States does, we pull funding from countries, or we withdraw support from the UN, and immediately it's filled. That void is filled by China, because they want to be the ones on top right now. 8,000 UN troops they supplement. That's almost 25% of the entire UN standby force. 3,000 or 2,500 troops in Africa alone, working as blue hats, building things and peacekeeping. And the United States is sitting here arguing about whether or not they're going to meet North Korean dictators and tariff steel and aluminum. We've abdicated our role.
But then you would say that these countries now that are being taken advantage of, then, right? These countries in Africa or wherever else China seems to be, putting their foot in the door, that maybe if they had some protectionist measures, maybe if they had a populist government, this wouldn't happen?
No, I'm saying anybody.
Because
there are always going to be
the
people that take
Italians feel this way.
It's kind of like I know that's exactly how fascism works. It rises because people fear immigrants, because they fear that their economies are collapsing. So they start imposing tariffs on things and saying, we're the best in the world, kick everybody else out. I mean, that's how China is. It's a homogenous society.
Yeah.
They don't want anybody in there. And the only difference between communist dictatorship and fascism is their mantras. But they're basically the same things. I mean, the rise of fascism, the neo-fascists in Italy that just swept their elections, they might as well just call themselves Chinese communists, because the only difference is that they believe in absolute control of the state, in the fact that, like how Mussolini, maybe he got the trains to run on time, but they told you what you could wear, when you could meet, who you could talk to, who could be in government.
And this was somewhat not unexpected but surprising, because everyone felt that maybe that whole populist fascist wave that was taking place after the 2016 election here, after Brexit, then you had the presidential win in France and all that happened, and kind of just stalled a bit, right? And then the Netherlands, I think they had an election a couple of months ago. The right wing lost. And it looked like things were stalling a bit, right? But now in Italy, this election, this wasn't, they didn't win a small part of the vote. This wasn't a unity government. They won a landslide, the right populist parties. And, to combat that, like, we always say pendulums swing back and forth. Merkel won, or she formed a unity government in Germany, and she will be leading them as their chancellor for now the 4th term. But do you think that Italy is again now an isolated event, or do you think this is just a continuation of the wave that is going to keep moving forward? Just like we did here in the United States with Trump, the way it's happening in England with Brexit, and now in Italy. Is this going to be something that we're going to keep looking at, or isolated one-time thing here in Italy because people are pissed? I'm not really sure about their economy. I know it wasn't doing well. I know it wasn't in the dumps like Greece's economy, but.
It's the third largest economy in Europe.
So what is their issue?
It is the worst performing economy next to Greece. The only country that's
high unemployment rate, stuff like that.
High unemployment's everything. The only problem is that the economy itself is 10 times larger than Greece, so it can hold out a little longer. But the Italian economy has been in the slumps for a long time. Silvio Berlusconi, who was the prime minister there, who's accused.
He just lost his grip and power there.
I mean, he was accused of pedophilia and prostitution.
But he was still waiting on the sidelines to get in.
However, these people were very supportive of Russia. Now, Russia itself seems to be kind of taking on the role that we were taking, where they're propping up fascism and dictatorships in Syria, but they're also getting stuck in Syria too, because just like we did in Iraq, they're getting stuck in Syria because Putin wants us to be done and over with. But now Syria is like, we don't want to negotiate with anybody. We're winning. Why would we do that? And Russia's like, no, let's get out of here. Putin's like, let's get out of here. They're not going to do it. You want to see what an ultra-conservative country looks like? Go to Saudi Arabia. They just now lifted bans on movie theaters and concerts. But if you go to a concert, you have to sign an agreement that says you will not dance, you will not sway, men and women will be segregated, there's no singing along, you stand there, you watch, and then you go pray to the prophet.
Some people just got locked up for that, right?
Yeah, but their new crown prince, Bin Salman, is trying to basically liberalize the nation. He allowed for women to start driving now. He's trying to he arrested a bunch of people on anti-corruption stings. These are all efforts to try and get out of the grip of ultra-conservatism. When you talk about things like Russia right now, for the second time in 10 years, 15 years, a Russian spy living in England has been poisoned. This time with nerve gas. 20 some odd people were affected by it. That was him and his daughter, though. Well, right? Yeah, but 20 people were injured in that attack. Whereas prior to that, I think it was Yushchenko was the gentleman's name. He was poisoned with polonium-210. He ingested it. I mean, they will stop at nothing.
You just know the names of these poisons.
Well, I mean,
I feel like I gotta watch it.
You might want to consider dumping that water.
Oh boy.
The fact is that the Russians are with impunity just moving about the world, doing what they want. They have already got strained relations with the UK. To be fair,
once they took Crimea, the piss was in the pool.
It's exactly. There's no discoloration that you can unsee when you've seen.
And Obama's my guy, but that happened on his watch.
It did, but then when we tried to punish him for it, He was already a lame duck. Congress didn't want to go along with it because he was a Democrat and black. And then Donald Trump.
You added that part.
Yeah, and then Donald Trump comes along and doesn't enforce any of the sanctions that were already there. So you've got a Russia that doesn't mind poisoning people in other countries because clearly they've done it plenty of times. They don't care what the UK thinks. They don't mind harming people outside. On their national television, the reporter, when talking about the issue, mentioned that this is something that happens to traitors. This is something that happens to traitors. They usually develop depression and alcoholism and go into prostitution, and they die from poison. And this nerve agent that was used to attack these two luckily didn't kill them, but it was as a message. It was a message from the Kremlin. Nobody should be standing up to us right now, let alone the United States. We're not going to do anything.
I really want somebody to do. You remember back when, Jesus, I can't remember his name. He's the last good Republican. And he
McCain?
No.
President?
No.
Just
the governor of Ohio.
Oh, Kasich.
Kasich, yeah.
John Kasich.
He said, I want to give Putin a bloody nose.
Mm-hmm.
Good
Somebody
man.
really just needs to punch Putin in his fucking nose.
Well, yeah,
I wouldn't want to punch
Putin
Putin in the nose. Yeah.
He rode a bear.
I wouldn't want to be the guy to punch him in the nose.
Listen, with regards to fascism,
I'll attend your funeral, though.
with regards to fascism, no one's ever
By the way,
punched a fascist leader in the face. I think that the rise of fascism is definitely predicated, and it's definitely something we can see right now. If you just went 5 miles in the air and you could see everything that America is right now, you can see that fascism is predicated on an increased military spending beyond the necessary limits to protect the country, a rise in nationalism, anti-immigration, heavy federal control, suspension of individual liberty, fervent support of the police and the military as if they were somehow superhuman, including revering your leader as godly or above the law, turning on your allies, ramping up domestic production of things, crackdowns on free press, expression, public gatherings, crackdowns on unions, crackdowns on the right to petition your government for redress, a legislature that toes its party lines before supporting its people, and it uses moneyed backers as a mandate for the rise in political incarcerations, and all of this under the veil of national security.
So we're a fascist country.
We are descending into fascism, but I believe
that
America is the only country in the world with a strong enough constitution and national intelligence to resist fascism. Yeah, with China, going right now to give Xi Jinping abolishing the term limits, they're doing
Trump
that. He loved it, and just like I said, if Obama tried to take a third term, if Donald Trump thinks that we're going to have a president for life, that's when I pick up a gun. That's when I start advocating my Second Amendment rights to defend myself against the government. Now, the Chinese government in 1982 imposed term limits for the very specific reason that they wanted to protect themselves from the bloody excesses of dictatorship.
That was not the reason.
Yes, it was. 1982, the leader of the Communist Party instituted term limits on the president because Mao Zedong and previous leaders that had been there for life just were bloody insurrections. They would just mow people down, arrested people. This was to deter that and to bring them more into a modern society and to protect military from being able to have absolute control of everything. That's why they were supposed to have that.
Yeah, but they also lacked a central role figure in that moment, kind of like they have now.
Yes.
Which is why it just reverted back to what it used to be.
The biggest opposition in China is people saying, if we don't have a constitution, we don't have a country. And if you're just going to destroy the constitution, you're destroying the Chinese country. Now, America's constitution, thankfully, is still well revered and people still take it somewhat serious. But we're not impervious to it. We're not impervious to subversion, to the stoking of fears, to get us to turn against each other, to turn the federal government against states and neighbors against neighbors, races against races, until we just ended up with a hierarchy of concentrated succession of leadership that can be established. This is how every empire has ever risen, and then you end up with warlords where you have a large empire, then you have people controlling these little things like Xerxes, like the Roman Empire.
Okay, but then
Rodrigo Duterte is going to be one of Donald Trump's warlords. Some of this is already happening
here now, though, right? I mean, what were you telling us about Kathy Griffin before?
Yeah, so this was actually really interesting. I didn't know this until Kathy Griffin was on Bill Maher's show last night, and we all remember the stupid picture she took with the disemboweled.
It was not that stupid.
Not disemboweled, decapitated.
Whatever.
I don't want to see Donald Trump bowels fake.
All right. Well, she had a fake
it was a cool image, though.
Trump head. Now the problem is, we all know that she got fired from her 1 day a year gig at CNN, right?
Yeah.
Now, which is funny because CNN, like 24-hour coverage, CNN is like all fuck Trump all day. With those Apple commercials are hilarious. Now, that said, they let her go, and I thought that was just it. But apparently, her whole career was basically put on a hold for this because. And you may think that that's fine, but all her shows got canceled in the U.S., right? But then she was also under investigation by the Justice Department, and and got put on a flagged list when she tried to fly outside of the country. I mean, she gets detained whenever she tries to get on a plane to go anywhere.
That's crazy.
If she didn't have powerful lawyers, she would have ended up in jail.
Or the money for those powerful lawyers.
This is what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. Martin Shkreli did, and he got 7 years.
Because he fucked with rich people.
He fucked with rich people.
Yeah, but he didn't go to jail because he messed with poor people. He went to jail because he messed with rich people.
He went to jail because he didn't shut up and get his money. He had
because he bought that one Wu-Tang CD, and people got mad because they wanted it.
Yeah.
So now
listen, seriously,
Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with.
But seriously,
protect your neck, bro. Protect your neck.
She. Like, think about that. Is on a flagged list to fly. She cannot fly without being detained. She had to be interrogated by the Justice Department.
All because she took a photo.
And her lawyer, she says her lawyer told her if these questioning doesn't go well, because she was gonna have to do a perp walk. They were going to detain her to question her, but her lawyers worked out that they could question her in her lawyer's office. But they were really going to arrest her for that picture. A comedian. Right?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we covered it at all, but I mean, maybe that takes things a little
before we
far.
started with this.
I mean, we're talking about Martin Shkreli put out a bounty for Hillary Clinton's hair and was considered a risk to national security, given a $5 million bail and detained. So if we can't say that is wrong to threaten a candidate like that, and for her to hold up an image of his decapitated bloody head, which brings up images of the Islamic terrorism with Daniel Pearl, who had his head cut off in Iraq, the journalist. I mean, that kind of stuff.
What separates us from them then?
What do you mean what separates?
Like the freedom to be able to express. She's a fucking comedian.
Requesting crazies on the internet to go out.
It's different than a comedian taking a picture.
It's different from just taking a photograph.
Like you would expect that from Kathy Griffin. Listen, you get me? Like, I was in shock. I mean, I guess it kind of was when I saw the picture, but still, like...
The picture was in poor taste. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it was in poor taste.
All I'm saying is that, yes, it was clearly in poor taste, and if someone wants to take it as a threat, they take it as a threat. I mean, if somebody held up an image
but to get her arrested every time,
if you saw Kathy Griffin holding up a decapitated face of your child or your own head or your wife's head, and she said, I'm just joking, you might still take it just a little bit seriously and be like, I don't know if I want to be around her, or maybe I want to keep an eye on her if I could.
But when you're a public figure, you're putting yourself at a different
level. You're now a public figure. You're on camera right now. If somebody,
fuck it then. If some crazy decides
if somebody takes, because I've seen a shitload of effigies of Obama.
Hell yeah,
absolutely. I've seen him lynched.
Now again, if we're saying that she needs to be on a flagged fly list,
no, I do not say that.
Saying that she basically, if she wasn't rich, would have gotten arrested. Mm-hmm. If we're saying that she had to be under investigation by the Justice Department, like that, if we're talking about fascist shit,
we are talking about fascist shit.
Like, that's some fascist shit.
That is some fascist shit.
Okay,
it gets hard to say.
It gets hard to say.
Okay,
I mean, we're talking. Listen, we're living with a president who admires fascists and dictators around the world,
which is a crazy part.
That who actually uses the Justice Department to create slideshows about Philippines and the Singapore's approach to drug laws and how we should try and start going through there. He's got a proposal in the works that would seek the death penalty for drug dealers, specifically starting with opioid pushers. If you transport like more than 60 grams of
Duterte.
it. No, this is Trump.
Wow.
Wants to push for the Duterte's
that
already.
That wasn't even a joke.
No,
I really thought you
Rodrigo
were
Duterte has extrajudicial killings of over 3,000 people in the Philippines.
That he's personally conducted.
He wants women to be shot in the vaginas, but with guns if they resist, and he doesn't care about the mother. He said, drag them into the streets and kill them. Doesn't matter. You will not get in trouble.
Okay.
Just like Trump said, punch him in the face. I'll pay your legal bills. Don't worry. And he wants to get the death penalty for drug pushers.
I want to end this with a big what if question for both of you guys.
I don't want a what if. I want to know.
I gotta say, this episode is a kind of a downer.
It is. It's a downer week. Hindsight's 2020. We mentioned that before. So when we look back at World War
I have one more
I,
thing to bring up to you, by the way.
World War I, World War II, we saw these all these countries slowly and not sometimes so slowly position themselves in the global stage based on leaders that rose to power and certain positions and decisions that these nations took or didn't take. Right now, we all seem to be forming teams again, right? In the world stage, we've mentioned all the big political actors now.
I'm on the winning team.
But who, right now, we're becoming more fascist and fascist, right? Our president is admiring men that govern in this style. If a war were to break out in the next coming years, if global catastrophe were to happen, who right now would become the default beacon of democracy and freedom in the world if it is not the United States, which right now we're kind of bordering on the guy leading us might not want to be that guy. So if something were to happen around the world stage, who takes up that mantle? Because right now, Russia, China, Philippines, us.
You mean for like Western values?
And just freedom, I guess. Yeah, for like actual, not someone like fucking Trump. Someone like Trudeau, or someone like
EU. So I guess by default,
but the EU that has like Turkey in it,
the EU
a Britain that doesn't want to be part of it,
virtually on the brink of collapse.
Yeah, and Italy that just voted for who.
All that's left of the EU is France and Germany, which I think that's what my answer would be.
You're
France or Germany or India.
Wow.
Yeah, or Canada.
Yeah, but Canada with what military?
Don't sleep on Canada.
I love Trudeau. I don't sleep on them. But they got to start militarizing their shit. Then I don't know.
They don't do that.
They don't. Hey, they've gone to war. They've gone to war.
I think on the low, Canada has a very strong military. And everybody just laughs at them.
Like the maple syrup and those freaking Mounties. They're not going to do anything.
Listen, they stick to their guns.
They do.
My thing though with either assuming that yes, I could see Canada.
Thank you for watching us, Miss Seymour.
Yes, I could say that Canada. Yes, that would probably be a beacon of democracy. Either that, France and Germany would be the beacons of Western civilization, and I think India would just be would also be another possible beacon of democracy. But with regards to France, Steve Bannon, who, as much as you say he's a hack and he's done, he's over there talking to Marie Le Pen and the Nationalist Front.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
She doesn't have a shot, though. I'm sorry.
They're changing the name of their party so they can appeal to voters for the next
Bannon
election.
has no place else to go because his benefactors over here cut him off, and so now he's looking for a new team.
Listen, you might say that now, but he's
like
staying
Varys.
active.
He's like a bad Varys.
He's staying active. He's still on his anti-immigration kick. And when the election rolls around, I'm telling you, we're going to see a little bit more from him. He might not be up to the same snuff.
Someone needs to catch him in a fucking lie and corner him like they did Littlefinger. No
yeah, but they executed him right away.
Which was awesome.
Yes, that was great. Spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
And I didn't say it, though.
You know what?
I didn't say
it. It was this guy. Graphic, but
yeah, that
and then it censors my mouth. It's like, spoiler alert.
So okay. So I mean, there's probably like 4 countries left in the world that are not descending into some form.
But isn't that crazy though, right? When you think of it.
Yeah.
Because if you think
most of South America is falling into it.
And if you think of the world division, even back in World War I and World War II,
Mexico's doing pretty good with democracy.
I get the doom and gloom, but I don't think America goes that way. Ultimately, I think we're in a bad time now.
We've been in a bad time for almost 2 decades, though.
I hear you, but we're not.
So when are we? But you just
it's not like we're gonna.
So it's the darkest before the dawn type thing.
We're not gonna join Russia, right?
No,
like we have bad actors here.
No.
But at the end of the day, I still think.
No, but I'm saying, what would a war with the U.S. versus China and Russia look like when we look almost like they do?
You're looking at it right now. It will not be fought with guns or nuclear
It's all
missiles.
proxies and it's cold.
Until it is.
No, I think
I just want to live on the moon. Me and Newt Gingrich, we're gonna build a base on the moon.
No one thought World War I could happen until it happened, and then no one thought World War II could happen until it happened. It was called the Great War when it happened. But whatever.
They didn't know there was gonna be a second one.
Exactly. These things you don't know, and it just takes.
No, I'm just.
There's just a lot of things going on right now, and it takes one little thing to set things off. Will this become a trilogy?
If we have a third World War, it would be a trilogy with like episode 2.5 was the Cold War, and we're trying to bridge the 2 world wars.
Or right now, the second Cold War is the prequel to the Third World War. I'm not trying to be a downer this week, even though we are. But hey, the conversation had to be had.
Ladies and gentlemen, that off the rails graphic was coming to you soon.
Which one? Oh, I'm like, what graphic?
Yeah.
All right, what else do we got? Is that it, folks?
That's pretty much it.
I
Yeah,
mean,
fascism
as
made it back home.
The cartoon pig would say, that's all.
Doobity-doobity-doobity.
Folks. Don't copyright infringe.
All right. Also,
all,
I do
folks.
want to take
Just
a
stuttering.
moment to plug. If you're into movies and you like interesting things and you like satire, go check out The Death of Stalin. Speaking of fascism,
It looked very funny.
it is from the people who make Veep, and so you can just
I like
imagine
Veep.
that style of storytelling, but surrounding the death of a horrible dictator and the aftermath in the power vacuum that ensued. And it's a comedy, but it gets serious at times, and it just, I don't want to ruin it for you, but Khrushchev is the guy who takes over. But
Spoiler alert.
Read a book.
Did he throw
Read a
any
book.
shoes?
They should have told you that in school. Now, but it sort of documents that, and I got to meet
Nikita Khrushchev.
I got to meet the director of the film and a few of the lead actors last night in the premiere. Pat myself on the back for that. But
You messed deep with Shemi, bro. Just say it.
I did, but he was kind of a.
Don't say it.
Not,
He might be watching.
I'm
Well,
not
because
gonna
he
say
didn't. I guess he didn't like to just be remembered for one thing.
Yeah. But anyways, why don't you tell them where they can find you?
I would have told him
guys?
I remember you from Billy Madison. That was my favorite.
You can find me at jmartinez on Twitter. Don't find me on Facebook, and find us, the show, on the R Squared Network and the second page, the 2NDPG, on Twitter and Facebook and
some point iTunes and a website.
And website. Yeah.
It's
Which,
so easy to find you on Facebook, though.
no, it's
You're
not.
linked on the second
You
page.
can't
page.
No, I'm
hide.
not.
I'm gonna post it anyway. I'm gonna
Okay.
post all of your personal
Fuck you
information.
guys.
I'm
No.
gonna be a fascist and take over just
I'm
by force.
I found you and I'm standing outside of your house right now.
Uh-oh.
Right this moment.
You sound like those weirdos on
Astro
like
projection.
Astro.
All right. Mr.
Astro
Oswald, tell them
protection.
where they can find
Mr.
you.
Oswald. I haven't been called that since my deposition.
Did you
You can find me in St. Louis,
Rolling
still rolling on them dubs, or wherever
Joseph S.
this points you
Oswald.
to.
Joseph So Oswald.
Joe So Oswald. Joe So Wald.
Joseph
Swold.
So, Joe Swold. Joe Swold.
What about the man behind the big brown D?
Wow. Okay.
Wow, your desk is brown.
Okay.
Oh.
We're not gonna lead to any illusions or fascinations.
There's a
there.
sword on it.
But
He keeps going.
no. Okay. So you can find me on our other shows on the R Squared Network.
You could find me on another show.
Yes.
I don't want to be here anymore.
But on The Real, if you like movies and you like TV and movie news and gossip and things, well, not really gossip. We try to have some fun. I don't know what we're talking about this week, so you'll find out when you watch.
The black
But it'll
male
be
version of The
movie
View.
stuff. Yes. Also, if you like to hear dads talking about their inevitable decline, you can watch 36 Chambers of Fatherhood, which we will record later today, and On The Real will be tomorrow, along with our weekly Walking Dead review show tomorrow night at 10:30.
Join the R Squared
You gotta
Network.
stop hating on the plunderers, bro.
Lot of things happening. So, and also, if you want to talk to me on Facebook or Twitter or wherever, because I'm not hiding from you, you can find me at Steve A.M. Johnson on your favorite social media network, as long as it's not Snapchat, because they are going down. I don't own any stock. I'm just saying. They're going down.
Well,
Okay.
hey, look, if they had just
Down,
sold
down,
to
baby,
Microsoft,
yes.
they would never have been hacked.
Well, they should have sold to Facebook, but that's neither here nor there.
But anyway, so tune in next week for the latest Trump fiasco.
There's going to be a show next week.
Same bat time.
Same bad time.
Stop
Yeah.
infringing on copyrights.
Okay.
They will come for us. We
No,
have
they
no
won't.
money to pay legal bills.
Joe, you will be
Yes,
our legal
I
scholar,
will
okay?
actually
You will
be.
represent us in court.
And we are
Okay, bye,
off the
everybody.
rails.
Later, guys. Have a good weekend. Don't drink too much. Stay safe. Drive home.
Or drink a lot and do